Welcome to the Tibet Center here at 151 West 30th Street, 3rd floor. We will begin by reciting the prayer for the spreading of the teachings throughout the length and breadth of the West. By the force of the blessings of the non-fallacious three precious gems and of the truth of our pure selfless wishes, may the precious Buddha's teachings flourish and spread to the expanse of all areas throughout the length and breadth of the West. For all the people living there, together with their near ones, who have engaged in the teachings and have faith and respect for them, may all conditions adverse to their practice of the pure Dharma be dispelled, and an excellent collection of favorable conditions increase like the waxing. And especially for those who work on methods to accomplish the flourishing and spreading of the victorious one's teachings, which are the source of benefit and happiness. May they never be oppressed by masses of interference and adverse conditions, and may this spontaneously happen just as we have hoped and wished. The Heart Sutra. Thus have I heard once. The Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of the Vulture-Peak Mountain together with a big gathering of great monks and great Bodhisattvas. At that time the Blessed One entered the Samadhi, which examines the Dharmas, called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the profound practice of transcendent knowledge, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Avalokiteshvara, "How should those noble ones learn who wish to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge?" And Avalokiteshvara answered, "Venerable Shariputra, whoever wishes to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge should look at it like this. Seeing the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Form is empty. Emptiness itself is form. Emptiness is not separate from form. Form is not separate from emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discriminating awareness, compositional factors in consciousness are empty. Thus all the dharmas are empty and have no characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, since there is emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discriminating awareness, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no objects of mind, no quality of sight, no quality of hearing, no quality of smelling, no quality of tasting, no quality of sensing, no quality of thought, no quality of mind consciousness. There are no nidanas from ignorance to old age and death, nor their wearing out. There is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no ending of suffering, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, no non-attainment. Therefore, since there is no attainment, the Bodhisattvas abide by means of transcendent knowledge. And since there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. They transcend falsity and pass beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the past, present, and future, by means of transcendent knowledge,
fully and clearly awaken to unsurpassed, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of transcendent knowledge, the mantra of deep insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra,
the mantra which calms all suffering, should be known as truth, for there is no deception. In transcendent knowledge, the mantra is proclaimed. Tayata Om
Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhisoha. O Shariputra,
this is how
now Bodhisattva Mahasattva should learn profound transcendent knowledge. And the Blessed One rose from that samadhi and praised the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, saying, Good, O son of noble family, profound transcendent knowledge should be practiced just as you have taught.
and the
Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Shariputra Ankiteshvara, that whole gathering in the world of its gods, humans, Ashuras, and Vinerables, our hearts full of joy, praise the words of the Blessed One.
I will generate with Chitta. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha,
Until I reach full enlightenment,
inspired
by
by
wisdom and compassion.
Today,
In the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain and dispel the miseries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world.
Let's do a round of Amani Padme Hum. How are you?
How are you?
Okay, so Amani Padme Hum is the mantra of compassion, and compassion is the wish to remove the suffering of others. So what we're trying to cultivate while we recite Om Mani Padme Hum is that wish to remove the suffering of others. So, very nice to see everyone.
Nice to see you.
It's been a while. This is my old friend with whom I went to school from the age of 13. Nice to see you.
You as always.
So I've just returned from a long journey. I left here in December, sort of mid-December. I went to,
The 4th.
sorry,
When did he leave? 4th?
November?
Yeah.
December 4th, I think.
November? December?
December, yeah, you were here for Thanksgiving.
And I went down to Mungod, to the south of India, where my monastery is, and where His Holiness the Dalai Lama had come to spend the winter, because it's very cold where he lives in Dharamsala. And his presence in the settlement totally changed the atmosphere. And each of the monastic communities in the settlement, which are called Lama Camp number 1 and Lama Camp number 2, had long life ceremonies for His Holiness, and I had the honor of participating in the ceremony at Lama Camp number 2, because Ratu, the monastery I belong to, is within Lama Camp number 2. And so I had the honor of presenting a kata, a white scarf, to His Holiness during that ceremony. And then had some, I was there for a project that when I resigned from, or requested permission to resign from the abbotship of Ratu, was told that I could resign from the abbotship of Ratu, but that I had to continue working on a project for forming a university that all our monasteries would be under in India. And so I had gone back to India to really work on that project. We have a long way to go. But someone from the Indian government and the Ministry of Education came to scrutinize us and to determine whether we were worthy of being considered a university, and we have to meet certain criteria, and we have to have our younger monks actually go through something that would be the equivalent of a school up to 12th grade to be able to be considered university students. So we have a ways to go, but we're working on it. And but I was there for that, and with the government representatives, we presented this plan to His Holiness, and he expressed the importance he attributed to it. So that was, I was deeply honored that this project has his blessing and is advancing. And then while there, I got news that my father was very unwell and approaching the end of his life, so I left and went to Italy. Hello. Gosh, this is quite a...
Stay there. Go to the chest.
How are you?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
I thought they already had to attend the school. I thought the schools already, no?
A lot of the monasteries have schools that don't quite get to
Yeah.
12th grade, and in order to be
Yes.
eligible to enter college, you have to have graduated from high school. So, I left India and I flew to Delhi, and there was some British officer in India had excavated some area in India. This is before India's independence, and had discovered these relics of the Buddha. And somehow he had decided that he would keep them for himself. And then, I don't know how they got to Hong Kong, the relics, maybe with him. And the Indian government, they were being put up for sale, for auction. Did anyone see this? No. And so the Indian government said, no, you can't auction the relics of the Buddha. And so somehow the Indian government was able to get the relics, and there was a very nice exhibition in New Delhi that happened to open just as I was going through Delhi on my way to Italy. So I went and received the blessings of the relics of the Buddha, which was nice before leaving to see my father. And I arrived in Italy, and my father, whom I had seen quite recently, a few months before, was in a hospital bed at home and weak. And after a day, my stepmother brought a doctor from the Italian hospice organization, who was very proud of this new technique he had of giving someone morphine mixed with some kind of a calming thing, and he had a little pump that he was particularly proud of, and he said, we just keep on pumping the morphine and then giving the calming, and then the patient goes into a sleep and we leave him there, and then that's the end. And I said, no, we're not doing that. That's euthanasia. We don't want to do that. And the doctor was surprised, because I think my stepmother had found him because he provided this. And so my brother and I spent the next 2 weeks sort of fending off my stepmother's wish to put my father into a sleep. And we spent a wonderful time with my father. And I was able to read prayers next to him, and I was able to talk to him, and my brother's children all came and visited him, and we had this lovely time, during which he got weaker and weaker, and if he had some pain, we administered the morphine necessary for the pain, and he died very naturally. And I was able to send a message to one of the secretaries in the office of His Holiness, who was still in Mungod, saying that my father had died and requesting His Holiness's prayers. And I had my brother take a photograph of me with my father right after he had died, which I sent along. And apparently His Holiness held this and looked at it and prayed for the attendant to His Holiness received the photograph and showed it to His Holiness, who then prayed for my father. So I felt that I had done everything I possibly could. And I tell you the story of the death of my father, not with sadness, but with delight that, first of all, we were able to enable him to have a natural death. And I was able to then convey this to His Holiness the Dalai Lama and request his prayers. So death is something that in our culture we don't speak about, and we feel is something that we spend our lives avoiding. But death is actually the most extraordinary moment of our lives. And a real practitioner prepares himself or herself to experience, to take advantage of, to make use of the process that takes place as we die. And one of the challenges I had with my stepmother was that she kept saying, "Your father is not a Buddhist. I am not a Buddhist. We're not interested in these Buddhist concepts." And I kept thinking, this has nothing to do with being a Buddhist or not being a Buddhist. This is a moment where this is the culmination of our lives, no matter what our belief system is. We are experiencing the result of all the moments, physical and mental, of our lives, the way in which we've led our lives, that lead to this very, very delicate, precious moment, which is, I wouldn't say venerated, but which is recognized by all religions, and anyone with any bit of sensitivity realizes that there's something special that is happening as this, maybe the candle extinguishes, or whether we believe that there's something that continues after that. But whatever it is, there's this sort of delicate moment that you are approaching step by step. So I thought I would discuss what that special moment is. This book, Death, Intermediate State, and Rebirth in Tibetan Buddhism, is the book that our teacher told us to read and to familiarize ourselves with. And what is being discussed in this book as we go through our lives, we are engaging in actions, virtuous, non-virtuous, neutral. We are accumulating the effects of those actions, and when I talk about actions, they are not simply physical actions, but particularly mental actions, the motivations with which we engage in physical actions, verbal actions. And those, the way in which we lead our lives determine the direction that our lives go in. And the motivating force in each of our lives is this sense of me. It is out of that sense of me that I desire, that I get angry, that I develop envy or jealousy. It all stems from this sense of me. And a recognition of the ways in which that engaging in indulging that sense of me causes me to be unhappy, a recognition of the fact that my getting angry causes me to be unhappy, my envying causes me to be unhappy, my desire, there's a lot of chocolate here for me to sort of contemplate desire. All of these afflictive emotions, as we call them, cause me to be unhappy. And the suffering or the unhappiness that I experience as a result of engaging in these afflictive emotions stems from holding on to a sense of self. And as most of you are familiar with in Buddhism, we work to recognize that if you look among the parts, there is not a holder of the parts. There's not an actual self that possesses these different parts that make up the self. And when we come to recognize that there is no holder of the parts, there is no me, there is no self, then there's no basis for attachment. There is no basis for aversion. There is no basis for jealousy. And all of those afflictive emotions that are what cause us suffering dissolve. So the practice that we engage in is one of recognizing that there is no self and deepening that recognition, deepening that experience to the point where we are no longer motivated by grasping at self. And one of the ways in which we arrive there is developing a concern for others, developing compassion, love for others, which sort of loosen the knot of self-cherishing that is the opposite of that compassion. Is it warm here? Is it, do you want to, should we crack the window a little bit?
And open the door and get across. That window open, please don't. Crack that a little, yeah, just crack it on.
Are you on?
I'm all right, but I recognize that so when anyone starts to get cold, say so. We can just open and close the window. Like. So, the practice of a practitioner in Buddhism is one devoted to recognizing that the actual lack of self and recognizing it intellectually, recognizing it on a deeper and deeper level. But still, there will remain with us a sense that I am looking for the lack of self. There's this overriding sense of me as the one who's engaging in the practice. There's the me, and that sense of self is so deeply entrenched in our relationship to the parts that make us up, and that it's extremely it's a many lifetime process of diminishing this sense of self. However, at the moment of death, as we actually at the moments that precede death, there is a natural process by which the coarser elements that make up this sense of me dissolve or diminish their force or their sense of sort of holding us or being held. And a dying person actually goes through the process that we're meant to be devoting our lives to, as Buddhist monks in any case, and we actually experience step by step the dissolution of the coarser elements of self and at the very last moment of life arises what's called the clear light of death, and that is an experience of selflessness. So it's not that I thought that my father was going to be able to take advantage of these stages and appreciate this moment of selflessness, but I did want him to have the opportunity to not appreciate but experience that. And that's why I really I don't know if I fought, but I worked hard to enable him to have this natural experience. So, well, I should probably say what these coarser elements of self that dissolve at the time of death. You have what is happening as the body no longer has the strength to sort of maintain the vitality of the physical element. The physical element starts to dissolve, and then you have the water element that starts to dissolve, and then you have the wind element, and then you have the fire element, and then fire first and then wind, and then, yes, but those are manifestations of, so the dying person will experience, first of all, a sort of mirage-like feeling, and
Red smoke, fireflies.
you have, and that's the dissolution of the physical,
Water.
and
Earth.
then, sorry?
Earth.
Earth and water.
And then you have smoke, and then you have like fireflies, and then you have like a butter lamp, a sputtering butter lamp, and then you have white, and then you have black,
Red and black.
red,
And then black.
and then you have black, and then you have the clear light of death. And these are the experience, this is what the dying person sees or experiences. From the outside, you can see the person grasping, and you can see these different, and I watched this with my father. I suddenly saw him start going like this, and then, and it's not that he continued, but there were these little manifestations of the fact that he was going through this process. When you come to the clear light of death, for us, for normal people, you experience this, and it's as the let's say physical elements that have contributed to our sense of who we are, our sense of self, as they dissolve, that process is sort of like having being undermined, having our footing removed, and it can be very, it can be scary for a person who is clinging to a sense of self and to life. And the experience of no self can also be terrifying to someone who is not in some way versed in this. What is said to then happen is that as we experience this clear light of death, that the vacuity that is experienced causes us to cling, and that clinging is what propels us towards the future, towards grasping at, and towards this whole process of the clear light going into darkness, and then into red, and then into white, and then into
The reverse
fire,
order.
and then into the butter lamp, and then into fireflies and into all of
Smoke
those
aromas.
visual. Now these are, it's not that there's a butter lamp and there are fireflies, it's that the experience, the experience is similar to those things. Now, how do we know all this? What I would say to my stepmother, let's get him to be able to experience whatever it is that we experience. And she would say, what proof do you have that any of this stuff exists? What proof do you have that?
Good remark.
And sorry.
That's a good remark.
The extraordinary thing about the Tibetan tradition is that there are people who go through these stages and life after life after life, and then report on them and write about them. And this book is by one of such beings. And we have someone who has really prepared himself through his life, himself, herself, and is able to actually make use of these stages conscientiously and prepare themselves going step by step, can actually then remain focused on that clear light of death moment and integrate it into their practice, into the process of purifying this view of self, purifying the way in which they regard themselves as, let's say, the manifestation of a bunch of parts. Instead of thinking that this is me, not having the sense of self that possesses these things, but simply the interdependence of the different parts. The practitioner who's really able to make use of the dissolution of these different aggregates and experience that experience of the clear light of death is able to remain within that for not the few moments or hours or maybe day that a normal person would go through that, but actually remain within that for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days. We had one former abbot of one of the tantric colleges who died next to the monastery, the Ratu monastery, and he went through this process very conscientiously at the end of his life, sitting, preparing himself, going through the visualizations of these different, or experiencing these stages. And then at the point of the clear light of death, he remained, there was a certain vitality that remained with him that went on for 3 weeks. And it was such an event that the Indian television came and was filming this person who the heart had stopped, everything had stopped, but there was this, there was no decomposition of the body. There was no, something remained, and since then, that stream of consciousness that came eventually to an end has been conceived, gone through the stages of birth, was recognized after a few years as the prior Lama, and he is now living in the place where he had died. So this is a process that's made use of by practitioners who prepare themselves throughout their lives to really be able to make use of the stages of death. So I realize that for many this could sound like a lot of mumbo jumbo, but it's and I realize that my stepmother thought of this as mumbo jumbo, but I'm happy that I was able to at least enable my father to have the experience of whatever happened with some conscientiousness, some element of consciousness. So that's my story as
And no interruption. He's able to naturally flow, event to event to event. It's a clear light. In other words, no one beating him, putting prods at him or anything like that.
So Tony brings up a point. When someone, in the monastery, when someone dies, we don't touch the person. As they approach death, we keep things as calm as possible. Sadness, crying or whatever, those kind of emotions are you keep that away, because that will cause the person who's dying to cling to remaining. You want the person to go through these stages with as calm, as unencumbered a state of mind as possible. No, there was not as much calm as I would have liked around.
We're in Italy, so
but there was no crying. There was no.
That's the big thing.
Yeah. Yes.
Is it true that you were entirely alone during this death process?
When you say it, is it, well, the process, the person who is dying, what do you mean by entirely alone?
Well, I guess what I meant to say is that I had heard, maybe it's wrong, that what your lamas and His Holiness and so on, that in the death process you could not call upon them because you were entirely alone.
So, in the monastery, when someone is dying, there will be his fellow monks around him, guiding him through, trying to help him maintain an awareness of the stages of death, so that he isn't afraid of them and is making use of them in a constructive way. So it's not that the person is alone. There'll be a group of people around the monk usually, but there's also the tradition of being all alone, because that's when you're most quiet and able to focus best. Now, one of the things that's rather interesting is that how long someone remains in the clear light of death meditation really depends on their spiritual attainment through their practice during their lifetimes or during their life. And you'll find, the monastery is full of different personalities, different people. You have the ones who are difficult, the ones with tempers, you have all sorts. And every once in a while when someone dies and they remain in clear light of death meditation for a week, and you think, him? And it's a total surprise that, because it's not that you're saying, hey, I've attained this, you keep your practice to yourself. So another note, there's an American doctor, professor from University of Wisconsin in Madison, who was given the task by His Holiness the Dalai Lama to work at identifying a sense of self that might exist after the point of death. And this was really out of His Holiness's wish to put forward the notion that consciousness and the brain were separate, that consciousness was not physical, that the brain becomes the vehicle by which consciousness sort of works mechanically, but that consciousness itself, that thinking, is not physical. And so he said the point at which you could actually show consciousness as not being dependent on, or not being, or the point at which you could separate consciousness from the brain would be at the point where the brain stopped working, the point of death, and if you could identify some quality of vitality that existed separate from the physical being. And he said that would be an area to focus on in your experimentations. And so this Professor Richard Davidson began working on measuring what might exist in the way of vitality in a dying person. And so he and his assistants were looking for monks who were approaching the ends of their lives. And I remember being at one meeting about this, and one of Richard Davidson's assistants said to me, "Do you think that we could get any of these monks to volunteer to be experimented on before they died, so that we wouldn't have to start looking for them, that moment between when they die and when this might arise is so we can't rush over, and if we had a few people volunteer beforehand." And I said to him, no practitioner would say, "You can experiment on me." I said, on the contrary, anyone who says, "Come and experiment on me," should be considered to be suspect. They're not the ones whom you should be experimenting on. Anyway, then along came a Russian, Professor Medvedev from Moscow University. And again, for some reason, I found myself at the His Holiness said to the two doctors, Davidson and Medvedev, "I want the two of you to work together," because they were both fighting over monks who were approaching death. And Medvedev opened a little a lab down in the Tibetan settlement where Raktu is located. And I happened to be there for the inaugural ceremony, and I got there early, and there was Medvedev, who had also gotten there early. So I hung out with this Russian doctor for about half an hour, waiting for the people to come, and he was a pleasant guy. And consequently, when he came down to start looking for dying monks, we would communicate. And sadly, after he had done his experimentation, I arrived soon after he had left, and then he died. But his assistant came to visit me, and she told me about how they hadn't found any vitality. There was nothing there. Once someone dies, it's not that there's anything measurable, she said. We really, we got they put these things on the poor dying person's head to measure any kind of vitality. She said, but what's interesting is that the body doesn't decompose, and that for the amount of time that they are theoretically within this clear light of death meditation, that they're able to remain focused on out of the practice that they've engaged in throughout their life, they're able to hold this, and the body maintains, it doesn't decompose. And then at the point where consciousness, we would say consciousness leaves, the clear light of death meditation ceases, the body decomposes immediately. And she said that was measurable, and we don't understand it, but that for someone who seems to be engaged in some kind of meditation, that goes on for maybe it's a few days, maybe it's a week, maybe it's 2 weeks, but that is measurable.
Has this kind of occurrence been noticed in people that haven't spent their life, as a monk and preparing themselves or understanding? This has been noticed in people that have no preparation, that they can get into this meditation period after death.
So I'm sure, there are many very qualified practitioners who are not monks, who are not associated with any religion, or who are simply going about their lives, who can make use of this. However, it's not that anyone would know. It's and I remember reading the brothers Karamazov, and at the very beginning of it, there's the story of the youngest brother, I think he's called Yasha, who is a novice preparing to become a monk, and they're in the monastery. There are two, this is Russian Orthodox Christianity, there are two. His teacher is dying, and he's right next to his teacher, the charismatic master in that monastery. And there is another monk in the monastery who is the sort of unpleasant, not grouchy, but he's sort of very conservative, traditional, not into the charismatic showings of Yasha's teacher. And Yasha's teacher dies, and then you cut in the book to the other the unpleasant, grouchy one, and he says, I smell the smell of decomposition. I thought he was more realized than that. And you realize that in Christianity, in Orthodox Christianity, there was some kind of recognition that the length of time before you decomposed was an indication of something.
His name was Alyosha.
Alyosha?
The novice.
The third brother.
Sorry, is it true though that it's, do you know, is it somewhat rare for that to happen? For there to be the delay of days or weeks for most people? Is it,
Oh, yes.
That's normally it's just immediately decomposition.
Not immediately. There'll be within a couple of days.
And then rigor mortis and stuff there too. So this is like
Rigor mortis is the point of decomposition, yeah.
Right, okay.
Can you say anything about being in a coma? How does that work? A person's in a coma.
My pay grade is very good.
happened to be in India when Rinpoche passed away. And he
Lin
went-
Rinpoche, whom she's referring to, was the teacher of the Dalai Lama.
Tutor of the Dalai Lama at the time.
In 83,
Yeah.
Pardon?
83,
Yeah.
1983.
83, absolutely. That was about his age too. Anyway, he died and went into this, what they call clear light. And from the day he passed away, the house, I was living next door, he was in Kim Yeshe's house, that's where he lived. The house was like, I called it an igloo because it was just pervaded with light. The most extraordinary impression. It was the first few days that I was the most, then I got used to it, like you get used to everything. And I had heard somewhere that when even a lama's body, mind is in a body that's contaminated, but see here, he was no longer in the body in the same way. So obviously this light was his clear light. And he stayed 13 days in that state. And on the last day, when he passed away, Lisa Heath, the sculptor, was asked to come in and do a face thing. She was doing the statue within which his mummy would be placed. And I was helping her. So the body was here. The Rinpoche was presumably finally gone for 13 days. And she went to climb on top of and I moved his arm so she wouldn't put her knee on his arm, and I was able to move the arm. And then she put whatever it was, the wax, etc., on his face, and then took it off. And then we left. And as we were walking down, I said, wait a minute. The head was stiff, wasn't it? She said, yeah, it was stiff. Rigor mortis must have set in. I said, no, because I moved the arm. And we looked at each other. And so that evening I came back and I asked his assistant, oh. And Kumo said, oh, you two walked out the door, and the head went like that. So, rigor mortis had not yet set in.
After 2 weeks.
After 13 days. Yeah, because he wasn't dead. You see, he died. I'm going to tell you something. You have to take it as it comes because it happened to happen. Just outside the hallway, his room was here. There was a window, and I often stood there, and there was this daisy that came up. And it was December. He died, I think, December 25th. And suddenly there was this enormous daisy. And I was like, wow, jump out, Rinpoche, look, oh yeah, it's unusual, okay. That daisy was there every day. And then one day the daisy was like that. And I called Rinpoche, I said, Rinpoche, have a look. And he had passed away. So I think the same reality of reality that allowed him to hold the head stiff while we needed it did the daisy.
So these are nice stories. But what's important is that we work towards diminishing this clinging to a sense of self and work towards transforming our relationship to our parts into one into a virtuous one rather than one in which we think of ourselves as holding on to these parts. That's your assignment. That's the homework. Okay.
Any names?
The pilots that died.
Oh, the two pilots.
Sorry?
The pilots that died last night.
Oh, there are many, so, just for those of you who, at the end, we say a prayer, and we think of those who, people tell us, people who have died. Well, there are many people dying. There, so please think of them as we read this. The Sutra of the Recollection of the Noble Three Jewels, where we're thinking about the qualities of the Buddha, the Dharma, the doctrine, and the Sangha, the spiritual community. I prostrate to
The Omniscient One.
Thus
the Buddha, Bhagavata, Tathagata, Arahat, Samyat Sambuddha,
the
the
learned
learned
and
and
virtuous
virtuous
one,
one,
the
the
Sugata,
Sugata, the knower of the world, the charioteer of training beings, the unsurpassable one,
the
teacher of devas and humans is the Buddha Bhagavata. Tathagata is in accord with all merit.
He
He does not waste the fruits of virtue. He is completely ornamented with all patience.
He is the basis of
The treasures of merit.
He is
He is adorned with
adorned
the minor marks.
He
He
blossoms
blossoms with the flowers of the major marks.
His
His activity
activity
is timely and appropriate. Seeing him, he is without disharmony.
He
He
brings
brings
joy
joy
to
to
those
those
who
who
long
long
for
for
faith.
faith.
His
His
knowledge
knowledge cannot be overpowered.
His
His strength cannot be challenged.
He
He
is
is
the
the
teacher of all
sentient
sentient
beings.
beings.
He is the father of bodhisattvas. He is the king of noble ones. He is the guide of those who journey to the city of Nirvana. He possesses immeasurable wisdom. He possesses inconceivable confidence. His speech is completely pure. His melody is pleasing. One never has enough seeing him. His form is incomparable. He is not stained by the realm of desire. He is not stained by the realm of form. He is not affected by the formless realm. He is completely liberated from suffering. He is completely and utterly liberated from the soundness. He is not possessed with dhatus. His ayatanas are controlled. He has completely cut the knots. He is completely liberated from extreme torment. He is liberated from craving. He has crossed over the river. He is perfected in all the wisdoms. He abides in the wisdom of the Buddha Bhagavats who arise in the past, present, and future. He does not abide in nirvana. He abides in the ultimate perfection. He dwells in the bhumi where he sees all sentient beings. All these are the perfect virtues of the greatness of the Buddha Bhagavata. The holy Dharma is good at the beginning, good in the middle, and good at the end. Its meaning is excellent. Its words are excellent. It is uncorrupted. It is completely perfect and completely pure. It completely purifies. The Bhagavad teaches the Dharma well. It brings complete vision. It is free from sickness. It is always timely. It directs one further. Seeing it fulfills one's purpose. It brings discriminating insight for the wise. The Dharma which is taught by the Bhagavad is revealed properly in Vinaya. It is renunciation. It causes one to arrive perfect enlightenment. It is without contradiction. It is pithy. It is trustworthy. It puts an end to the journey. As for the son of the great Dharma, they enter completely. They enter insightfully. They enter straightforwardly. They enter harmoniously. They are worthy of veneration with joining palms. They are worthy of receiving prostration. They are filled with glorious merit. They are completely capable of receiving all gifts. They are object of generosity. They are great object of complete generosity. Protectors of great kindness. The omniscient teacher. The basis of oceans of merit and virtue. I prostrate to the Tathagata. Pure, the cause of freedom from passion, virtuous, liberating from the lower realms. This alone is the supreme ultimate truth. I prostrate to the Dharma which is peace. I believe liberation show the path of liberation. They are fully dedicated to the disciplines. They are only filled with merit as virtue. I prostrate to the Sangha. I prostrate to the Buddha, the leader. I prostrate to the Dharma, the protector. I prostrate to the Sangha, the community. I prostrate respectfully and always to these three. The Buddha's virtues are inconceivable. The Dharma's virtues are inconceivable. The Sangha's virtues are inconceivable.
Having faith in
Faith in these inconceivable,
therefore,
if your wishes are inconceivable, they may be born in a completely pure realm.
all right, we'll read the 8 verses on training the mind. With the determination to accomplish the highest welfare of all sentient beings, to surpass even a wish-granting jewel, I will learn to hold them supremely dear. Whenever I associate with others, I will learn to think of myself as the lowest of the most, and respectfully hold others supremely
From the very depths of my heart.
in all actions I will learn to search into my mind, and as soon as a disturbing emotion arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly face and avert it. I will learn to cherish the achievements of those oppressed by strong misdeeds and sufferings, as if I found precious treasure difficult to find. When others are treat me badly, with abuse, slander, and so on, I will learn to take all loss and offer the victory to them. When one whom I benefited from a great hope unreasonably hurts me very badly, I will learn to view that person as an excellent spiritual guide. In short, I will learn to offer to everyone without exception all help and happiness directly and indirectly, and respectfully take upon myself all harm and suffering of others. I will learn to keep all these practices undefiled by the stains of the 8 worldly concerns, and by understanding phenomena as light illusions, release from my bondage of attachment. And a prayer for the swift return of RINPOCHE.
Exalted wisdom of all victors gathered in a drop, sole refuge manifest in the form of the one wearing saffron robes, Guru Lazan Tuam Dorje Chan.
Please bear witness
Today that our prayers may be fulfilled.
We beseech the great torch of doctor, accomplishing so long ago
the vast ways of aspirational prayers.
Lord of
Lord,
peace,
teach the Victor Lazan's teachings, spreading them to the ends of the earth by means of explanation and practice.
beholding the commitment, I will invite all beings to be my guests
and
and
unsurpassed great awakening.
Yet you have withdrawn the activities of the form body that serves the welfare of others. Is that worthy of the supreme among beings, the Bodhisattvas? Though impossible for you till cyclic existence's end, to abandon your commitment to liberate all beings, we beseech the new son of Brahmanakaya to swiftly return from Brahmanakaya, brought forth by Bodhicitta drawn by studied steeds. Having reached the power of his scholarship, religious life, and goodness, please come swiftly as an unrivaled supreme illumination, full holder of the sage's teachings, and wish to fill the jewel. Return to the glory of the Last Day. Magnificent truth of the 3 precious jewels, Mahakala, Kamayama, Srimata Devi, and the ocean of Dharma protectors, may you spontaneously fulfill our wish, the swift blossoming of the reincarnations of our fresh moonlight face. Thank you.